Today's amazing guest is Yitong. Yitong is a product designer who's worked for more than 4 years at Coinbase, and now he's the founder of Vector DAO, which is a design collective which designs for the Web3 space. Yitong, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here.
It's good to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, so how was your trip to Colorado, by the way? You went to Denver, right?
Oh yeah, it was amazing. Met a lot of cool people. I think it's been a while since everybody's met up in real life, so there was definitely a lot of pent up desire to socialize, which was really great. I caught COVID there, which is not so great, as did a lot of other people. But you live and you learn.
I know. I was there at the same time, but I was just skiing with my friends. And while I was lucky that I did not get COVID, unfortunately, I got the traveler's diarrhea. But now I'm back to normal.
Awesome.
So you had quite the ride. I mean, you started out as a founder, right? And then you went back to, doing a job. So I'm kind of curious to know, what was the transition like for you? Meaning like being a founder where you have a lot of, I would say, flexibility on your time. You kind of get to choose what you could do. And then you work for corporations or agencies where you kind of like are somewhat like guardrails of what you have to do. So how did you manage the transition?
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate you calling me a founder for what I did after college. It was for full context, a couple of buddies and I started a company in college, and we operated it for about a year afterwards. It was okay, it paid the bills, and so technically that makes us founders, I guess. But yeah, honestly, the transition to having a job was very interesting. I just remember the mindset shift being really different. It was just shocking to me to have to read other people. I think it's sort of a thing where like when your first experience out of college is sort of doing your own startup, the thing that like the skills you pick up is sort of around like, is what I'm doing working, and do people want this? And that's the only thing that you think about. And transitioning from that to working for somebody else and then having to think, is this what people want out of me? Are people happy with me? Like how is the organization here? Who are these people and who decides what? That was pretty shocking to me. That was like a thing that I had never really thought about. It was just like, look, the only thing that I care is, are people buying my stuff? And so that was like a big transition.
So it's almost like where on one side as a founder, you have to focus more on product market fit, whether customers are buying the product. Now you have to also focus on the soft skills. How are your interactions with the coworkers? How are they like rating you? How are you perceived in the organization and all that sort of fun stuff?
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, it's like, it almost matters less whether you're doing the right stuff. It's like, are you doing the things that people want you to be doing? Right. I think it's like, and hopefully that's the right things. But the disconnect for me was always kind of like, sometimes I thought that what I was doing was the right thing. Other times I didn't, right? But I think as a founder, it's very alarming when you realize that you're not doing the right thing. You're like, we got to change what we're doing. And working for somebody else, it's like, well, actually, a lot of times you are not doing the right thing in your estimation, and that's sort of the thing that you learn to live with. And it's just that never sat quite right with me. And so I've held on a little bit to that dissatisfaction throughout the years, and that's kind of why I'm having a second go at starting something.
Wow. And then we're going to come back to that. So tell me, like, what set of events from the point that you started working, you started doing a job. So from that point, you're working as a designer, you're at the agency. And then from that point, what turn of events led you to first learn about crypto? Like you're a designer working your day job, but then somehow you discover crypto, go down the rabbit hole. How did that happen for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just buying crypto, right? It's a little bit the story for everybody else. First, you're like kind of skeptical. You don't know what's going on. And you buy a little bit of crypto and then price goes up and you're like, holy crap, like what happened? And then now you're stuck. And like, so just to back up a little bit, I I actually did my degree in sort of undergrad business school. So I was kind of always interested in econ specifically, and like had been sort of like following crypto on the side. But because Coinbase for a very long time was not available in Canada, there was no fiat on ramp, and so the only thing that you could do is sort of like OTC your way into some Bitcoin, and what that means is you like meet up with somebody in the street, you hand them some cash, and they just hand you a stick, with some Bitcoin in it, and hopefully you don't get robbed and jumped. And so I never managed to get any until I moved to the States. And when I did move to the States and I got some, and I was like, okay, something is definitely happening here. Um, and it coincided for me with sort of, and it's like, and to be clear, when I say Bitcoin, this is like, I don't actually literally mean Bitcoin. My first thing that I ever bought was Ethereum because I was interested in Bitcoin, but it really never captured my imagination the way that Ethereum did. And so owning Ethereum and just understanding the vision of Ethereum totally rocked me. Honestly, like, this is sort of like 2017 when it had become sort of like clear that the that like FANG companies had a pretty much like a monopoly over talent and had basically like cash printing machines, and were going to be very, very dominant in the Web2 space. And that the room for new generational defining companies was growing smaller and smaller because the pie had already been divided, and so really the only things left were the gaps between the slices. And so Ethereum just felt like totally new pasture, right? Like crypto felt like it just opened up a whole new place for people to like do stuff in a radically different way. And when you did stuff on in this ecosystem, like it would not lead to the kind of pie division um, in the long term that we've seen in Web 2 because of how the protocol works, right? And this is kind of like I read Joe's article called the Fat Protocol Thesis, and it like deeply resonated with me. How like a lot of value accrual happens at the protocol level, and how that's like shared commons. It's public good for all to benefit from. So the more you build, the more public good there is. Versus the Web 2 world, where the more you build, the more wall gardens erect, and the more things become private islands.
So this is insane. Like you're basically self-taught crypto person. You taught yourself, you bought Ethereum first, and then you're teaching
I mean,
yourself
everybody's a
about,
self-taught crypto person. To be
right?
clear, there's nobody who is lecturing you and giving you degrees in crypto.
I think now there are like some boot camps and stuff that I'm seeing popping up, like not boot camps, but like CBCs or cohort based courses where you can kind of like quickly learn about
Yeah,
DeFi and all these things. There's so many books, but the fact that you bought in 2017, that was still like very early, where you had to just do it on your own. So from that point, what led you to decide that, hey, you know what, I think I should join Coinbase and work there?
yeah. So I was very excited about crypto, and I was especially excited about CryptoKitties, which was sort of like the people don't remember CryptoKitties anymore because like everybody thinks of like OG NFT projects as like CryptoPunks,
Bored
but the
Ape.
reality is that well, not really, right? Bored Apes is the new entrant. Like when people think
Yeah.
about like original like NFTs, think about like the whole narrative for CryptoPunks is that they are the original. But back then, people weren't really excited about CryptoPunks. They were excited about CryptoKitties because CryptoKitties was sort of there was it like really there was like a utility to it, right? And that was a little bit of the promise of Ethereum is that like we're not going to be trading coins back and forth all day long. It's like we're going to be doing stuff. And CryptoKitties was the real time. That was the first time that there was non-financial utility on chain, which is really exciting. And so I was like big time into it, and I was building like a CryptoKitties price tracker, um, and that's where Connie reached out, and she was like, "Yo, you want to just come help us do design on Coinbase?" And at the time, I was ready to quit my job, and I was either going to go to like GitHub, Lyft, or Coinbase. And Coinbase was just like kind of like, "Why don't you want to just come?" And I was like, "Sure."
Yeah. And did you know Kwani before? Or was it just through the hiring
No,
process you got to
no.
know her?
This is I think she was I mean she was trying to recruit, so she had started this sort of Facebook group because that was a thing back then of people working or interested in the space, and I kept posting it there because I was like I didn't know any other designers who were interested in this. Um
Wow.
And so she was like, "You're clearly very excited about this. You want to come work with other people who are excited about this?"
Oh my god, this is just amazing. Just like hearing the stories, because I'm like I'm interviewing now. I've interviewed her, so it's just like it's amazing to tie the dots together.
Yeah.
And so you joined Coinbase, and what I'm kind of curious to ask you about is there's a lot of designers that I talk to that haven't, I would say, ventured into the crypto space. They might have gone to Coinbase, maybe bought some cryptocurrency, a little bit of it, maybe they haven't. And the biggest stumbling block, what I hear from them is there's just so much information out there. So what would you recommend to people like designers who want to like get started with crypto? Maybe they want to design interfaces in the Web3 crypto space. How should they go about doing that?
Stop having other hobbies. And it's just try to sleep less. No, but I think you're right. Right, you have identified the fact that like crypto moves really, really fast. And like to be frank, that was like a constant struggle back at Coinbase, where like it felt like the organization had a hard time to keep it up, as most people do, right? And rare are the people who are actually able to keep up. And I like to imagine myself as somebody who keeps up relatively, but I know that I'm behind on a lot of stuff. Um, and the advice that I usually give to people when when they onboard to Coinbase when I was still there is that the best way to learn and to keep up is to just own some stuff and to try to do something. Um, it sounds extremely dumb and straightforward, but it's sort of like there's so much stuff out there that you can read. There's sort of like a deluge of stuff that you can read, and you can sort of be in this cycle of like, I gotta read more for like a long time. But the reality is that like you will learn so much faster by just doing stuff. And this is a little bit like it's the same approach as when people like ask you like, how do I start coding? And you can keep reading these blogs, but like, I think the reality is that you should just spin up a website, and then that will teach you way more than everything else. So that's kind of what I told people, right? Just like, look, whatever you think is interesting in crypto, whether that's NFTs, DAOs, like DeFi, just do some stuff, and try to capitalize on the thing that interests you. Are you interested in NFT because you think NFT art is cool? Go make art, like go try to sell some NFTs. You think DAOs are cool? Join a DAO. You think DeFi is cool? Are you tired of having all your money in SPY? Like go do some degen yield farming. And then just let yourself get sucked up in the hype. I feel like sometimes a lot of people what they have is sort of like a natural defense mechanism against hype, because they're like, oh, something must be wrong. And
Yes.
I think yeah, and I think that's probably pretty healthy, but there's sort of a little bit something to be said about just getting lost in it, and letting yourself be carried by it for a little bit, um, and then kind of like you can sort of like periodically reassess and say, hey, does this even make sense? But yeah, I think that's kind of the way that you try you keep up.
So if a designer, let's say they do all these steps, they read about it, they buy a bunch of stuff, keep relatively up to date with it, but then the big challenge comes in. Oh, I want to work at a company in the crypto space, in the Web3 space, but my portfolio is all about Web2. It's all about these big companies. I don't have any work in the related to crypto. Then what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's okay because the reality of 99% of people. I think that the trick is that it depends on where you want to work, right? But I think the trick is that you actually have to like this stuff and be knowledgeable. Like when I used to do interviews at Coinbase, like the thing that I would always ask is, hey, what's something that's been exciting about in crypto lately for you, and talk to me about why that's exciting for you. And you can sort of tell the people who just want a job, right? They're like, oh, I really like Ethereum. And I was like, cool,
Yeah.
what about it? And they're like, oh, I don't know, it's pretty, like, it's really cool. And it's like, okay, well, they didn't really like, they're not that excited about it and they didn't do their homework. But if somebody was like, yo, I just put a lot of money on Olympus and I got like wrecked, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand how Olympus works because I like, what the heck happened? And then they tell me all these things in detail. I'm like, okay, that's actually, it's okay that they never design, but it's like they're trying stuff, right? And it's like it's really like when nobody knows anything, it's the speed of growth that really matters. And the speed of growth is just like a function of your level of interest. And so I look for that. Honestly, that's kind of the number one thing. I was like, and this is the thing that I've looked for in Vector too. It's like, are you a degen? Have you tried stuff? Have you made art? Like That's all it takes.
Now, I'm gonna like throw out the elephant in the room, which
Sure.
a lot of people are gonna be like, why is he even saying that? A lot of people may not even, let's say, care about crypto that much. Maybe they're just, like even talking to you at Coinbase too, they were just excited by the hype, or they've heard that you can make like serious amounts of money by getting some moves right in crypto. So what is what do you say to that, like in terms of motivation? Like, hey, I'm very passionate about this space. I see that this is very early space. It's kind of like somebody joining in Web 2 days. So like in Web 2, we had this thing where if you join Airbnb or Uber early on and you got equity, like that could be life-changing amount of money for some people. um,
Yep.
but in Web3, if you join a protocol or you get like early token allocation, that can be life-changing too in some cases, and
Yep.
I've known some people who have experienced that. So what would your advice be for that if that's the motivation?
I mean, I think that's okay, right? It's gotta you gotta get your piece. Like I don't fault anybody for trying to get that come up. I think it's very reasonable. I think that the thing is that like it always helps to like what you're doing. I don't know if you're truly extremely agnostic towards everything, that's okay. Then yeah, and then just like you're just like an EV maximizing kind of person, I think that's okay. But I hope that you kind of like get to like this stuff eventually because I think it's really really hard to keep abreast of all that's happening without actually liking this stuff. Um, and I think over time, if you don't keep abreast of everything that's happening, you will become a little behind, and that will impede your ability to be very successful. Um, and so I think that's kind of it's still the advice that I would give is just probably try to cultivate your interest in this space because you will need it at some point. It's like it's a nice to have in the beginning, but towards like at above a certain level, it's sort of like a must have because you're no longer you can always push pixels, right? If somebody gives you a spec, you can always push pixels against it. That's not really an issue. But if you're trying to move above the career level where you are pushing pixels against a spec, then you will need to know what's going on, and being interested is helpful. And if you really, really wanted to be an EV maximizing person, you should come do Vector DAO, right? Or or roll your own kind of Vector DAO, right? Just go contract at a bunch of places for equity and build yourself a portfolio. That would be truly the EV maximizing play. But if you were truly also like totally not excited about crypto and just here to maximize EV, I don't know that we would be the best fit at Vector, but you could probably run your own solution.
So let's talk about both these routes, but more importantly, I want to talk about the Vector DAO route you just mentioned. If you really want to like maximize for that, just equity and wealth, and I'm so glad that we're talking about this because it's kind of like always a taboo in the design circle to talk about money. Like my brother works in finance, and in his field, people openly talk about money, deals. You
Oh,
know,
people in finance have a number, right? Like I have friends at hedge funds where they have a number, and when you say what's your number, everybody knows what they're talking about. It's the
yes,
yeah, right. It's the how much money do you need in your net worth before you quit finance forever? And
yes.
it's just people openly talk about this, and it's just like a thing. I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's super healthy, but I think that there's some
Yeah.
degree of that that is kind of important. It's like, look, people make money, people like spend money, and money is a huge part of life. And let's talk about it.
They're just so openly talking about each other's compensation, their strategies, and and what I like about that openness is that when I'm in design circles, it's usually the conversations are about everyone's passion, tool preferences, latest design patterns, and it takes a while for me to just that candidly like just talk about like, well, what is your compensation, what are your strategies, what are you investing in, like those are conversations that we don't usually have. And I think in the design community, that's something we need to think about because like everyone is at the end of the day working for, whether there's family, the personal wealth, like for someone else, like money does matter.
Yeah,
And I think if we openly talked about this and how you're candidly talking about, hey, if you want to maximize your chances of making money in your career, these are the routes that you should go towards. So I want to talk about the other route you talked about, which is joining Vector DAO. So for designers listening in, how would you describe Vector DAO to them?
yeah. So Vector is a collective of designers who are either very deep in crypto or very excited about crypto, who are also sort of at the peak of their craft. And it's sort of a little bit of like it's a lot of things, but like it's sort of like the thing that we explain to people that we work with is that for designers, it's a really good like for designers in this space, it's like a place to get peership, community, with others who are sort of in the same sort of like a space as you, and also sort of like getting like a totally different economic package that is not available elsewhere, right? Like, and the way and the package specifically is to be able to earn a basket of early stage crypto startup equities and tokens through your work. So having a little bit of like a venture return profile without actually becoming an investor, while still remaining like a great designer, right? Because you don't necessarily have like it's like a like in order to usually traditionally if you want to get that kind of return, you have to do a totally different thing with your life and your skills. But this is what we're offering is like do the thing that you're excellent at, and then get the return that like you know is far more interesting. And for companies, it's a really good way for them to work with talent that is like crypto native or very excited about crypto that they wouldn't be able to hire otherwise. So we have this kind of like arbitrage where if you were even a very good startup, right, recruiting is super freaking hard because you're asking somebody to full ass commit to your thing for like a very serious amount of time. Whereas at Vector, it's like, look, our pitch is that like if you're really good, just come hang out with other people who are your peers that you respect and try it, right? It's like no skin off your back. And so we're able to get really cool people that they would like never be able to get, frankly. And then they would love to come work with us and give our pool equity because they're like, wow, like yeah, we'll pay whatever, like to be able to have instant access to this kind of talent. Well, not whatever, but it's like we're willing to pay like the equity.
And so the question that I have is a designer who probably wants to join Vector DAO is, do I need to quit my other day job or full-time job, or can I moonlight on the side? Can I work on weekends and nights?
Yeah, I mean, we have no view about what you should do about your life. This is the cool thing about like sort of being like a DAO is that this is like all we ask is that you are engaged in our DAO and are doing something every quarter. This is the thing that we tell everyone. It's like we expect you to be doing something. Whether you do multiple things and you're doing this full time, like that would be awesome. But if you didn't want to, right? If this is kind of like a thing that you do on the side when you have time, that's okay too. Um, because our model works no matter what. And in fact, we want you to enjoy that freedom. It's like and that flexibility. That's like a plus for us, right? It's like us being able to offer you this sort of thing that is not a trade-off against what you'd be doing in your day job, but rather a complement. Because people moonlight on the side all the time, so this is just like a different way of doing it. It's actually a plus for us.
As I'm listening to you give such an amazing pitch for Vector DAO, I mean, again, granted that I am deep in the Web3 space, the crypto space, and I see the potential. Um, I've had conversations with friends who are like, they would rather take a freelance project that gives them like cash, like um, rather than take a risk in crypto. And I just wish more people would, you know, use their skills and like diversify and say that, what, let me try two projects with Vector DAO, give the best work possible, and I can always go back to doing fixed cash based freelance projects. I just wish that more people would see this viewpoint.
Yeah, that's I think that's like I think people don't really understand. Maybe people do. I'm not sure, but I feel like people don't really fully understand the extent to which the power balance has shifted in the hand of the really talented makers. Like I think it's moved so fast. This is like especially in this space, frankly, in the Web3 space, it's moved so fast in the last 2 years that like I think people are just kind of they still have whiplash over like, wait, I can get away with this, or it's like, oh, wait, actually, this is what I'm worth. What the heck?
And we were talking about compensation, so I'm involved in like deeply in the magic ecosystem, and I was just like, there was a conversation happening, and some rates were posted. So one of the
Sorry,
persons in that
which magic? The
the
magic like
magic,
loot magic?
yeah, the magic token ecosystem.
Yeah,
Um,
the loot the one that was bootstrapped off loot, right? Just
yeah,
making
yeah,
sure.
the John
Yeah.
Patton
Okay.
one, yes.
Okay.
Um, so I bought some of the tokens early on, and I was lucky that like I got some early at good prices, and then um, and now I've got it locked in a 1 year mine. So they have an amazing concept of how they're gamifying the whole decentralized finance world. But in that community, there was this post that came out where one of the lead front end designer slash developer got paid 110 ETH for consulting on 2 projects. And as of right now, as I Google what is the ETH to USD and I do 110 ETH, that's like, goddamn, that's like over almost $324,000. It's just insane. And even if someone were to freelance that kind of work, that's even hard to come by unless you're an agency. So the reason I'm openly talking about compensation is because a lot of times when I talk with designers, they're not only hesitant about crypto, but they don't understand like the amount of life-changing money you could make if you just take some bets in the space.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not risk free, right? Like, I think
Yes.
this is the thing, right? It's like, I think your risk adjusted return is a lot higher in crypto, but the risk is also higher. So it's like the return is much higher, but the risk is also higher, and therefore
Yeah.
your risk adjusted return is still ultimately higher. But I think it's like, I don't want to like make this sound like there's free money to be picked up,
Yeah.
on the floor here. But it's like if you play your cards right, I think it is true that the EVs are pretty good.
And I've gotten wrecked, just to be candid, like with you. Like there was
Yes.
index fund that was just purely about investing in DeFi tokens, right? DeFi Fi index that I invested in, and they got hacked, and I put in like, what is it, $30,000, and like, holy shit, like I remember that night when I just came home and it was gone.
Yeah. Crazy shit. Yeah. It's like and that's the sort of all consuming part about crypto is the winnings are out there, so to speak. But and you've seen people do it too, but it does take a good amount of diligence and a good amount of sort of like doing your homework to figure out, okay, what's real here and what's kind of like an exit scam. Because exit scams are real, and it's like you gotta not you gotta not get rugged. So yeah, it takes a lot of
How do
effort.
you? I'm kind of curious about this with Vector DAO. How do you, when you're consulting with projects and clients, like how do you like do the background check to make sure that, hey, this is a legitimate project, this is not just an exit project, or long term it could be, like just weird, or it may not work out because you're putting
Yeah,
in a lot of like work and time in getting it done.
yeah. I mean, it's very similar if you think about it to like how traditional investors do it. So we'll have conversations with these people, um, and we'll try to understand their business. We'll like usually they're either like we typically work with people who are frankly warm intros or like are founders who have investments from firms that we know and trust, and then we'll also do like a quick like if they're in our network, we'll do also like a quick background check with people we know. It's like, hey, is this legit? Is this like, do you think it's going to be a real business? So we do all this sort of like traditional steps like normal investors would go through diligence deal.
Got it.
So our problem hasn't usually been, is this an exit scam? I feel like exit scams usually are pretty easy to spot, but I think the question is like, is this like a sound business, right? Like, do
Yeah.
we think that it's going to be like a thing that is worth betting on?
So you took something I want to ask you that I really relate with you on is that you're an immigrant, I'm an immigrant. So there's always this mentality that we have to prove ourselves to a lot of people, like prove the doubters wrong. And
Yeah, the
it's a
chip
good,
on the shoulder.
yeah, exactly. And like, it's
Yeah,
like all those people said to me that you cannot make it. Who do you think you are? And there's always this like,
yeah, but yeah, it's like almost like a fuck you. I'm gonna make it to prove you wrong, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
like I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna make it, and all this. How dare you doubt me, my skills? And it's a good feel for like a while. It's like this negative thing that I'm channeling on, and it really drives me. In one of your articles, you said that, well, that's a good thing to latch on as a fuel, but this negative energy is not sustainable in the long term to keep driving on this kind of like negative feedback, trying to prove the haters wrong. So I want to ask you, like, when did you change your mind on that? Like, what made you change your mind on that?
yeah. This was sort of like I was exactly like this all the way up to I had many chips on my shoulder all the way up to sort of the beginning of the pandemic, and I was like, wait, hold on, I think I'm at the place where young me would have been really proud of myself for. but and like I'm still feeling these feelings. And frankly, like just like coping with COVID and also these feelings was like a lot. And I was like, I don't know that I can do this forever this way, right? It's like at some point you just gotta like you just gotta move to a place where things are exciting for their own sake, right? Or that you want to do things for their own sake, not for other people, but for yourself. And I think it's a much more it's more honest. I think first of all, because oftentimes the things that prove other people wrong, are not necessarily the things that you deeply care about. It's very confusing sometimes. Where is it? Do I want to do this because it feels like the thing that would grant me the prestige or the respect that I need to prove other people wrong, or is it something that I genuinely want to do? And when a lot of your energy comes from proving people wrong, it's hard to tell. Um, and I think that matters in the long run because and you might have noticed this about me, but I really believe in doing things that you actually are interested in, because that's the only way that you can sustainably do things for a long time. Um, and so when a lot of what you feel is driven by other people, it's hard to know what you really want. It's like and that's kind of like and then it's in turn hard to find the thing that really drives you. And most things that are worth doing are hard and are going to take years, if not decades. And so, if we're gonna spend decades proving somebody wrong, then I feel like you've wasted a lot of your life.
So on that point, let me ask you, like, doing things that you talked about, like you want to do things that you're genuinely passionate about, so that for the long term it's easier for you to stick with it. So the decision to leave your full-time job, and a lot of people from the outside would be like, oh my god, like he's made it, like he's a designer at Coinbase, like it's so much potential there. And then you left that to pursue Vector DAO full time. Was that decision hard, or was it just very straightforward for you?
It was actually pretty straightforward, honestly. Um, I I took this job at Coinbase hoping that it would be the last job that I would have working for somebody else. Um, Obviously, it panned out way better than expected because the company went public, and so now uh, makes it a little bit more tenable to take risks with my life. But I was probably going to do it anyway. And I just somewhere deep in me was sort of this. I mean, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but this dissatisfaction with
Yep.
being told what to do and then not agreeing with it. If there was a world where I was always told what to do and I always agree with it, that would be awesome. I think that's so rare, that you would be in a place where it's like 90% of the time I actually agree with what I'm being told to do, and I would do it that way. So that a lot of times that's probably going to be at like a very early stage startup where it's like, well, damn, like if I'm going to be, at a place where I'm basically a co-founder, but I'm going to have 1% of the equity instead of like 50, like I might as well start something. So it was that it wasn't that hard. It was always in the books. Yeah.
That is amazing. Oh my god. And then let me ask you, with your current thinking, like, did you ever think that, hey, you know what, like if this is the last company I work for, if situations change in the future and I have to come back and work again for another company, did you even think that far? Or you're like, it's not a big deal, like if I have to come back in the future and work again for a company?
I just don't think that's, maybe this is me being overly confident, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Okay.
What is the worst case scenario, right? Like worst case scenario is that I just like am a freelancer, right? That's like
Yeah.
it's not, yeah, it's like that's like it's still sort of working for somebody in that like you have clients, but it's like you decide ultimately what you want to do, right? It's like that's the very very worst case scenario. So I was like, okay, well, I would prefer that over sort of like working in a large organization again. I might change my mind on this. I think that the scenario that I would that I would go back to work for somebody else, be like, I actually changed my mind. There's something somebody really really exciting, that I want to work for, and that would be like life changing, right? So that I would make an exception for that.
What is amazing with you, man, just talking with you, what I gathered from you is like, you look at this life as like a game. It's like this like multiplayer game that you're viewing that, and you're like, you know what? I'm playing this game whether you're working in a large corporation, whether you're freelancing, whether you are working in the crypto space. You're like, the way I talk to you, the I'm getting this mental model where you're like, one has to figure out first of all what game they're playing, right? And then figure out like this game that I'm playing, how can I maximize it? So it makes it very easy for me now to like visualize, okay, if I'm working in a large corporation, how can I maximize the game, like the gains there? Like maybe I need to work at a company that gives the maximum amount of cash bonus or whatever that might be. If I'm doing the freelance stuff, this is the way I can maximize that game. So it's really mind blowing, like the way you strategically um, try to maximize the
Yeah, I
gains
mean,
there.
to be clear, I'm not an advocate for maximizing. I'm an
Yeah.
advocate probably for just knowing what game you're playing and knowing
Okay.
how like being cognizant of the way that you're playing it, right? So you can decide not to maximize things, and I think that's totally legit. But I think it behooves us all to know the game that we're playing. And I think oftentimes like people don't know what the real game is, and I think that's kind of a shame. You can be doing all the outcome sometimes is the same. It's like you don't know what game you're playing. You're playing it this way, versus you know what game you're playing and you still choose to play it this way. Technically, it's the same outcome, but I think it matters a lot for your own mental peace.
And I really like the part where you said that a lot of times people don't know what game they're playing. And I would also agree with that. And can you give an example like where it's not really beneficial to someone where they don't know which game they're playing and how it can not benefit them? Do you have an example at the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't think people understand like tech call packages very well at all. Um, right? Like I mean, I think the larger the company, obviously, the less tricky the comp situation is. But like the smaller you are, I think most people don't understand what they're getting into when they take a comp package from a company that is sort of early, because in order to understand that, you kind of have to understand how venture funding works, right? And then it's like and then it's like people say tell you, oh, you're getting this many shares, it's gonna be great. But what is it worth, right? It's like like what is what valuation, and it's like there's all sort of this kind of this math that people are not doing, and like this confidence people don't have when they take offers, that I think is a little bit of a shame.
And also, I think when I talk to a lot of designers or just people in general, they're afraid to ask these questions because it's like you don't want to come across as this like gold digger person who's interested in the money because you're like, okay, I've got the offer. Let's not ask too many questions. So I totally get that. Like that you should be asking these questions to understand what are you getting into.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, nobody ever faults for asking questions. You can only look smart asking questions, not dumb.
Oh my god! Even asking dumb questions. No, that's nothing like dumb questions. Just kidding.
Dude, asking dumb questions is the ultimate flex, right? It's like I am secure enough in myself that I'm willing to ask you this seemingly dumb question because I know that I will not get judged for it. Um, that's a flex.
I never viewed it that way. Oh my god! Thank you so much. Um, what final words of wisdom do you have for designers who are, just on the verge and they're like, you know what, I'm going to do something in the Web3 space, whether it's working on a project, whether freelancing, doing their own stuff, whatever that might be, or maybe join a company that's in the Web3 space. What would you tell them?
Um, I would say probably use all the things, try everything, see what you like. It's like have fun, right? It's like okay, maybe the strong version of that, this I give privately to people that I hesitate to say on air a little bit, but fuck it, is embrace the greed. Um, I think this is kind of like the thing that people don't really like, but it's like look, a lot of Web three is about making money, and it's like it's a little bit of like it's the underbelly of a lot of things, frankly, and it's like some of it is extremely unsavory, and other parts are great, right? It's like NFTs, like artists are finally making money and getting paid for making things that people appreciate, versus exit scams, right? Like people stealing your money like that they did to you, but it's all sort of like a lot of it is profit motivated, and then just not being afraid of sort of like looking at the fact that it's profit motivated, and seeing both the good and the bad with like sort of like an even keel. Like I think it's kind of like I think it's kind of important. I think I think that Web three has a way of making sort of the implicit profit motive in life explicit. You can sort of go around the world sort of not really thinking about these things if you don't look at Web three, And sort of like it's impossible to do that in Web3, right? It's like if in Web3 like the money is extremely obvious, and I think that turns people off sometimes. Like, oh, I'm not about that. But it's like it's worth sometimes embracing the greed to really like follow the money and understand how where the incentives are and why people are doing the things that they're doing. Um, and I'm rambling here, so you can cut this if you want. But it's like why does yield farming even exist, right? Like if you cannot answer this question, you are probably in a bad place.
Yeah.
And you probably shouldn't yield farm, right? And that's kind of like that's kind of the if you can't explain floor price to me, you don't know why floor price exists, and you don't know how floor price works. You probably shouldn't be trading NFTs. Um, and so yeah, just kind of like follow the incentives.
And how can people contact you?
Yeah, I mean this is it's Web3 world, right? So just Twitter is the best way. I'm at ZHAYITONG everywhere. So just that's the best place.
Got it. And thank you so much, Yitong, for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.